Have you checked the children?
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I'm Jaime and Fuego.
I'm Cecil Laird.
And if it please you, join us here for some Hail to Sting-esque, but Hail to Stephen King-esque palaver on the horror show. Welcome, everybody. And this is a long-requested discussion about Castle Rock Season 2, the inspired by Stephen King Castle Rock Season 2, because whereas the previous one had maybe some minor characters, this one features a major one in the form of a young Annie Wilkes, and so it is more so like taking bigger and well-known characters and trying to do something a little bit more familiar, as opposed to the drastic and in some ways odd departure that was the first season of this show that I wasn't honestly the biggest fan of. I think you were kind of a similar mindset.
I almost didn't watch this season at all. I told Fuego, I'm like, you can watch this one. I'm not going to bother with it, because I was so disappointed, and I felt like my time was so wasted with the first season. It was just a meandering mess that didn't end up paying off in any way, shape, or form. However, when I finally sat down and I had some time, and I was like looking for a new show to start while I was waiting for some other new episodes to pop up, and I was like, I'll at least try the first episode and see if it catches me enough to want to watch the rest. And because of the Annie Wilkes aspect of it, I don't like Misery very much, but when I watched this first episode, she did such a good job, Lizzie Kaplan,
She's terrific
of
in this.
absolutely embodying Annie Wilkes, that I was more mesmerized with how well she was doing it. And then by the end of the first episode, I was on board for her story as well. Unfortunately, episode 2, I watched the first episode and I told Fuego, I was like, okay, I'll watch this season. I'm interested enough. They did a good job hooking me. I'll watch the rest. And then episodes 2 and 3 started to deal with this B plot that was just so lame and boring and like didn't pay off again at all. It was a very half-baked Salem's Lot-esque kind of thing.
Dealing with Jerusalem's Lot, the name of the town, yeah.
Anyway, my overall thoughts were all of the Annie Wilkes stuff was really interesting, but literally everything else I could care less about and could have done without entirely. Give me a 4 or 5 episode Annie Wilkes story and leave the rest out, in my opinion.
I'm of the exact same mindset about this. They tried to just shoehorn in, for whatever reason, Jerusalem's Lot and spend a good chunk of time there, as opposed to leaving it all in Castle Rock. And yes, granted, I know, Derry and Salem's Lot and Castle Rock, and even to a lesser degree like Ludlow, which is where Pet Sematary takes place, and a couple other stories like oh boy, it's eluding me. God damn it, Fredo. Anyway, Cy King has this like immense universe, the Dark Half, I should say.
There you go.
So he has this immense universe of all these different interconnected towns and whatnot. For this one, they decided to bring in the Salem's Lot, but not quite with a vampiric aspect. They change it up.
A everlasting life aspect, yes.
Mm-hmm, true.
But vampiric aspect,
and coffins as well.
I mean, it was, I thought you might like it because there was a very blobby aspect to the vampires.
I guess to a degree, or to these possessed people, as we later kind of find out that they are. And there's even more. I mean, despite, the presence of Annie Wilkes and, just the significance of her in the Kingverse, so to speak, we also have Ace Merrill, who is obviously not played by Kiefer Sutherland in this like he was in Stand By Me, which was based on the body.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that character. I've never seen Stand By Me. So.
Yeah, it's really good. And Ace has popped up in the book version of Needful Things. He popped up in a story called Nona, which is a short that Cy King had in Skeleton Crew. So that's another well-known character. And then Pop Merrill, who was played by Tim Robbins and played pretty damn good, although in a much more sympathetic sense, because he's a character in a novella called The Sundog from 4 Past Midnight, which deals with this camera that has like an evil power that has like this rabid dog coming closer and closer. You take a photo, and as opposed to getting a photo of what you took a picture of, you have a dog, a rabid looking dog, getting closer and closer with each coming shot. And this kid decides to try to sell this camera to Pop Merrill, who we see his weird trinket pawn shop in this series, and so that's from Cy King books and stuff. But he's definitely an asshole in the books, and he's got he's got some negative history behind him, as we find out. I don't know. Should we just spoil discussion this about?
We'll do the spoilers at the end. I think
Okay.
let's finish talking about it, and then we can spoil at the end.
Yeah. So you've got the Pop Marrow character, and he has a connection with these two kids who were Somalian refugees that are all grown up now, and they're on the Jerusalem plot side. And this is where it gets just
Don't
kind of
care about that
kind of
plot
dull.
line.
The B plot was just not interesting. So I mean, overall impressions as we segue into the story, I will say that the Annie Wilkes stuff was awesome. Awesome. Lizzie Kaplan killed it in this. No pun intended, in fact. And you find out the full extent of her craziness like right away too, when she shoves like an ice cream scoop
scooper
down somebody's throat. It's nuts. You know? Yeah. And bam. Yeah. It's nuts, man. And her performance. When the story veers away from her and focuses so much more on this growing cult in the community and all this other stuff,
And
that's
Pop
where
and his Somali adoptees.
yeah, that's where they really lost me, man. And thankfully, in the 10th and final episode, they veer back to the
Wilkes,
to
the
the
Wilkes of
Wilkes
it all.
story specifically, and it actually gave me a very satisfying conclusion in a lot of ways. But yeah, the B plot with the Jerusalem's Lot sludge. Possessed cult people just did not do it for me in this. So I'd say about half of it was exceptional and so much better than the previous season, and then the other half was just kind of meh and forgettable and didn't really bring anything interesting to the table.
Yeah.
So character-wise,
we did kind of talk. You hit the story basically.
A little bit about the story. I mean, yeah, really, there's this growing cult which extends all the way back to like. I mean, we're talking like colonial times, essentially. There's so much history, and they do talk a couple different times. They're like, oh well, people go to Salem for the witches. We had our own witches here. And Tim Robbins is Pop Marrow. He's like, no, they were demon worshippers. And that actually, the cool thing about that is it does tie in with a short story called Jerusalem's Lot, which is included in Night Shift, and it's a prequel to Salem's Lot, but it doesn't deal with vampires. It just deals with the fact that there's been evil in that community for just centuries, and the fact that some of the earliest settlers there were demon worshipping, crazy, inbred, it's almost like Lovecraftian in some of the craziness and rats in the walls and all this stuff. So yeah, I mean, they try to veer more so into that as opposed to the vampire lore of Salem's Lot. So I don't know. That was at least cool to see the little nod to that, but really, there's not much else to mention aside from.
Well, we mentioned it's Annie Wilkes, but the story is
with regards to her.
Yeah,
she's on the run.
Is on the run with her daughter, and they're looking for the Laughing Place, which is this place that they're supposed to both live happily ever after. And they happen across Castle Rock, and they're there long enough because of a car accident that the daughter becomes attached and.
Has a
Annie,
little love interest.
Yeah, Annie wants to leave right away, and then Annie changes her mind because she's accepted by a doctor with her pill habit, as it were, to handle her little bit of crazy that she knows is there.
Yeah.
And so they're in this town, and their story just gets wrapped up with all this stupid B story stuff when Annie takes care of that body that she kills with the ice cream scoop, and it sort of launches and starts tying the two stories together. So that's her story, and when they keep it on her, it is super engaging. But man, everything else is just bleh.
Yeah, there's one episode in particular, the 5th episode, where we learn the history of Annie Wilkes and her learning disability as a child, and we find out who, like the origin of her daughter and everything that went down with that. And then the episode right after that as well was also just comparatively compelling in my estimation. I mean, all the stuff with her backstory, with her pill popping habit, with her changing license plates and putting on this nursing uniform to go steal medicine and all this different stuff. I mean,
her refusal to adhere to societal norms as far as human interaction goes.
yeah, big time, in fact. But that makes sense for the Wilkes character. I mean, she lives in borderline seclusion when we meet her in Misery, and she takes in Paul Sheldon and everything. So when the story focuses on her, it's very, very intriguing, and it's heartbreaking. It's kind of scary at times. And when they fold her in to the B story, and she's running around with Pop Marrow and his couple of grown-up Somali adoptee kids, and they essentially go against this cult that thinks Annie's daughter is going to be the vessel for the reincarnation of this colonial demon woman. It's kind of silly, man. Although we can't get into it in the spoilers, they do Actually, and thankfully, wrap up
Without
some
the
loose
B story,
ends. Wrap up
the
some loose
end
ends.
wouldn't be as impactful as it was. So.
Yeah, true. And also, they wrap up some loose ends from the previous season. One of the biggest issues with Castle Rock Season 1 was the fact that there was so much left unanswered. There were plot threads that were introduced and never explained, never really gone into an extensive amount of detail.
There's one person from Season 1 that shows up in Season 2. And we won't say when, where, how, or for how long, but...
Because they had said that they weren't going to have any connection. They were going to be just their own separate anthology
But there was
stories.
a direct connection.
Yeah, let's just say it's kind of an American Horror Story type connection where there would be like someone from a previous season that would show up for a little bit kind of thing.
Yes, well, not in the sense that the same actor comes back to play a new character.
Yeah, true. Because good to give some clarification,
So, no, this is the same character that comes back and was not expected in any way, shape, or form. So, But then that's even given short shrift.
Yeah, it's just kind of a afterthought, in all honesty, and it's probably just to appease people like us who were pissed off with just so much of that first season. This one is more focused, I would say. Even if I didn't like the other story with the goopy, cult reincarnation people, I still felt like it was less all over the place than the previous season, which had really the only strong episode last season was the Red Queen one with the whole mental just instability of our lady. So
So effects wise, you're right. I don't want to skip over the acting. Acting was okay, although I got a little tired of the daughter's sourpuss through it was just so overplayed, and the problem is when she has her sourpuss on, it doesn't even look like she's acting at all. It's just boring, bland character work. So that was a bit of a problem. But everyone was, Annie Wilkes, Lizzie Kaplan stole the show. Ace Merrill was okay. Tim Robbins was fun, but no one really nailed it like Lizzie Kaplan did.
Well, she stole the show is really what it boiled down to. And her daughter was in a movie called 8th Grade that received a lot of different attention. It was like a younger version of Lady Bird that came out about a year or so ago. So she was kind of playing a similar angsty character to that, where she's just like mom, or in her case dad in the 8th Grade movie, just not liking her parent and just wanting to go off and rebel a little bit and do her own thing. So it wasn't really a stretch for her from what I'd seen her in previously, but and I thought both of the Somali grown-up children, the adoptees,
well, one is the captain from Captain Phillips. I am the captain now. Did you not realize that?
Well, I never saw Captain Phillips, but I know that was one of the biggest credits he had on his IMDb. When he was in this, and so
I am the captain now. Yeah, he's got a big role in this.
He's a significant one, and sister as well. But I thought Robin's playing a little bit more sympathetic version of Pop on this other level of the tower.
He wasn't that sympathetic outside of the fact that he had a malady that he was dealing with. He was kind of a dick otherwise.
Well, and that's more in line with the actual character. I don't know. I mean, just comparative to the way he was written before is really not having any redeeming qualities at all. And in this one, he did have some regret and an essence of guilt and conviction and stuff.
Fair enough.
I mean, the source material.
Did he adopt?
No, that's completely,
so that's why
that's completely in this. Although when you find out why he adopted them, and yet I
true.
called it too. I even told Catherine that's one thing that I will, just to jump back to the writing. This did not do a lot of stuff that I found unpredictable at all. In fact, I called before it happened a lot of different things in this season, from the death of certain characters to who killed them. That was shrouded in secrecy for good chunks of the series and stuff. So I mean, I don't know, there was no real bad acting aside from maybe a couple of her friends that she makes in the town. I thought those kids were kind of like whatever. But everybody else was solid enough, and the acting in episode 7 where it's flashback to colonial times I thought was really strong. So
now effects. I mean, it was some gore effects here and there, but not very prevalent. That initial Annie Wilkes ice cream scoop thing was kind of the biggest thing. Yeah, not much outside of that.
No,
but,
not really.
But it was okay. Yeah, I don't know. I guess you're not there for the effects in this kind of series.
This was definitely more so about the human drama.
Yeah,
I'd say,
and that's why I'm not all that on board with it. So, cinematography was fine. It told the story well. I didn't have any issues. I didn't notice at any point oh, that's an odd thing to do or anything like that. So that was all fine. Really polished TV presentation at this point. All of that is a well-oiled machine at this point. They don't even really have to think that hard about how they're going to film a show nowadays.
Yeah, all of those big drone shots of the town are very majestic and look very pretty and stuff. I'm assuming it's the same time they used for the previous season, because it looked almost identical. I know it's somewhere up in Canada. It's not in. Or actually, no. Maybe it's a little further down into New England. I know it's not Maine, though. I want to say maybe it's somewhere in Massachusetts. But in any event, it can easily double as it. And yeah, I mean, an improvement over the first season. Yeah, I would definitely say so. But I don't know if it was enough of an improvement, and especially with the fact that the third season hasn't even been ordered yet. There's a lot of speculation. This series might be done so.
Yeah,
so,
I think it might be too.
And honestly, I wouldn't be too disappointed if that's the case.
Me neither.
It wouldn't be a hard
one less series to have to bullshit, have to keep up with just because I have this show to do.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not bitter.
Spoilers,
you guys.
How about a little bit of
Oh,
spoilers?
yeah, okay,
Just-
we'll do a
just
spoiler
couple
section.
things in
Okay,
particular.
go ahead,
Yeah.
go ahead. I don't
Yeah.
really, I don't even know
the
what
whole
you're going to spoil.
Well, the whole death of
Okay,
Ace-
so 5, 4,
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, spoilers.
Annie Wilkes killing her child at the end of this season was definitely a shocker, even if I saw it coming.
Her sister.
Or her sister, Jesus Christ, for you.
That's the other spoiler, is that it's not her daughter, it's actually her sister. And she ends up killing her because she thinks that the cult has gotten to her. Because they had kidnapped her and they had brainwashed her with the statue very briefly, but then the statue was destroyed, or at least sunk out of sight, and everyone kind of snapped out of it.
That wasn't enough of an explanation for me, honestly.
No?
But,
Okay.
I guess that's what was setting up the beacon, so to speak. To
Yeah.
get everybody brainwashed in the first place. But
Well, that's what I thought. So that's why when it went away, everyone kind of snapped out of it. But the daughter, didn't. She was still acting kind of weird, and she was taking a phone call, trying to hide from
Making
Annie. And
weird
of course,
drawings, too.
yeah, and Annie just her over paranoid brain works against her, and so she thinks that her daughter, which is actually her sister,
which she knows,
which
is her
they
sister,
know at this point. So she looks at her like a daughter. She still protects her like that. And so the daughter turns out was just trying to get away, and had written this beautiful letter that just wanted to get emancipated, but it wasn't a forever thing necessarily. Like, she was like, it's not going to be forever, it just needs to be for a while. But unfortunately, Annie reads the letter too late, and her paranoid mind gets to her. She thinks that she's still a part of the cult, and so she literally drowns her daughter out back. And then she comes back in and finds the letter and goes out and tries to save her. And what happens, Fuego?
She tries to resuscitate her, and she does. Or does she? And
After like 10 minutes out there, she
Yeah.
resuscitates her.
Yeah, and just the way Joy is acting, and the fact that she's suddenly just back to being
her
super
old self.
sweet and her old self and everything, you just really think you're like, something isn't right. And yet the letter evidenced the fact that you knew that Joy did in fact love her, despite all the issues, despite the horrible stuff she was aware at that point that her mother had done. Because when we find Joy's real mother, when she comes all the way across the country, and there's that confrontation with Wilkes, and she's gonna kill Annie, and Joy comes to her rescue, essentially, you know that she still does love her mom, and I thought that was actually a very tense and interesting subplot. Once again, anytime we had the Annie Wilkes plot going at the forefront, this was a very interesting series. And so yeah, she brings Joy back to life, and everything seems to be great. And they go to this Paul Sheldon book signing, and she sits down, and this gentleman walks up to her with Joy in the seat beside her, and is like, "Is this seat taken?" And she's like, "Well, of course it is." And he's just like looking at her like she's a little nuts. He walks away, and then the ending shot of the season is of the fact that she is seated with nobody beside her. And so she's obviously imagining that her daughter is actually been resuscitated and brought back to life. So whereas Annie was obviously teetering on the edge with all the stuff she did, with killing her father who started the affair with the tutor and just all this different stuff, and I mean, that was just such a compelling episode. It just, man, I mean, seeing her with the child, and she was about to drown the child, and then the child started laughing, and she couldn't do it, and that became Joy, all grown up. And so she was teetering on the edge of insanity for probably the extent of her life, but after she killed her daughter, off the deep end, donezo, and that's why we get Misery, which, just like you, not one of my personal favorite Stephen King books, but one that I find interesting and well written, and this gave a little bit more just insight into the inner workings of the character, and I appreciated it a lot. So everything else to spoil, I mean, aside from the return of the kid who was locked in the cage from the first season, and getting some explanation about him being this interdimensional jumping angel, like more like a demon of sorts, but I mean, that was cool to get some explanation there, and just to find out that Castle Lake is a thinny, so to speak. It's an area where you can do this interdimensional jumping between worlds like we had a taste of in the first season. And so, I mean, getting a little bit more explanation from him, sure. Are there still some loose ends here? Ace Merrill is still alive. We still don't know what's up with the kid. We know Henry Deaver from a little like flyer of sorts that's at the gas station is a missing person. So that's presumably the kid was able to get out of the cage, which the kid being the Skarsgård character from the first season. So there is more that they could do here, but in a lot of ways, I feel like, you know, they wrapped up most of the main stories and they gave explanation and closure from the first season now. So it's, once again, I'm not going to be super bummed if we don't see a third season. So it is what it is.
All right, we got to kill it.
Yes,
It's
I know,
too long
I
a
know.
review.
I just started going. My bad.
All right, guys. Well, let us know in the comments down below if you watched it. What did you think of Season 2 of Castle Rock? If you enjoyed this video, click the like button while you're down there, subscribe, and click the notification bell if you want to make sure you don't miss other reviews like this going forward. We have to rapidly review the first volume of Lock and Key as we're approaching the Netflix series, so stay tuned for that. Thank you guys very much for watching. Until next time, I've been Cecil Laird.
Gracias, Jaime, and Fuego.
And remember, stay scared.